Happy Monday, everybody. I hope you had a good weekend and that you're having a great day so far. So, I wanted to put a YouTube video up for Friday's episode this past Friday, and I was trying to open up the software. For those of you who even care to know what I use Wondershare Filmora X, and I went to open it and it would not open. I uninstalled it, I reinstalled it, it still wouldn't open, could not figure it out. So I tried downloading Movavi and doing that and recorded the episode, but then it didn't record any sound. So I couldn't put Friday's episode up on YouTube, which stinks because, I would have liked to have been able to share that more. I might can go in and re-record it and add it later. Who knows? We'll see. Probably not. Anyway, but I finally got it to open, as you can see, because if you're watching this on YouTube, then you'll see that I actually got it to work. Which thankfully, because otherwise I would have had to get in touch with them and get a refund for the last 9 months because I paid for an entire year of service to get rid of that watermark and get all the extras with it. But if I was only able to use it for 3 months and couldn't get it to work, then I would want a refund for 9 months, obviously. Anyway, so that's how that went. Um, Today I don't really have any specific thing like with politics or anything like that as far as what's going on right now. But Steven Crowder did a show and he had Alex Jones on. And I know a lot of people don't like Alex Jones, they think he's nuts. But I'll tell you, he's been right about a lot of things. There's things he says that I absolutely disagree with. But for the most part, he's been pretty right about a lot of stuff going on. And they talked about a few things. And I pulled up their show notes and some other things that he talked about. And I want to take a look at what he was saying because I think it's very interesting. And I don't think a lot of people know about it. So let's get right into the episode. Let's start with our daily promise. And it says, "And such were some of you, but ye are washed, but ye are sanctified, but ye are justified in the name of the Lord Jesus, and by the Spirit of our God." 1 Corinthians 6:11. Our lives prior to our personal redemption consisted of various backgrounds, some of which were very carnal. Yet, as Christians, those are now things of the past and should no longer control us. We have been washed. When we became Christians, we were cleansed of our sins. Sanctification is the process of setting us apart for God and growing in righteousness. Lastly, we were justified because of Christ's work and atonement. Our destination is not eternal bondage of sin and grief, but by the grace of God, we have a heavenly destination, a place of eternal joy and everlasting peace. Then if we look at 1 Corinthians 6, 9 through 10, it gives us a list of those carnal things. "Know ye not that the unrighteous shall not inherit the kingdom of God? Be not deceived. Neither fornicators, nor idolaters, nor adulterers, nor effeminate, nor abusers of themselves with mankind, nor thieves, nor covetous, nor drunkards, nor revilers, nor extortioners shall inherit the kingdom of God." Now, I just want to point out something with that scripture because a lot of people take that out of context and say that if you do any of those things, you will never go to heaven. These are things that an unrighteous person would do. But let me be clear that someone who has come to the saving knowledge of salvation and accepts Jesus as their Lord and Savior, they still have the capability to sin because they are in a corrupted human body. And Christians will sin. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. They're going to sin. They're going to be convicted of their sin and wrongdoing, and they're going to ask God for forgiveness. So that doesn't mean that a saved person can't become an alcoholic or can't have a sexual affair with somebody else or have uh, you know, a sexual relationship before marriage. That doesn't mean that a saved person can't or won't end up doing those things at some point. They do. Christians have done things all throughout history that are still sinful, but that doesn't mean you lose your place in heaven. Once saved, always saved. I've done an episode on that. I've laid out all the proof that you need from the scriptures, and you can check that episode out if you want to. But that's the truth. Once you're saved, you're always saved. Yes, you should try to live a life according to what God sees as a righteous life, but that doesn't mean that you're not going to fail and make mistakes, and God knows that. That's why when you're saved, you're covered with the blood of Jesus, and He doesn't see those sins. He's cast our sins as far as the east is from the west, so He doesn't see them. But that doesn't mean that you can't make mistakes, but you can always ask for forgiveness for doing so. Anyway, that went down wrong. I took a drink and it went down way wrong. Anyway, I just wanted to point that out because I don't like to confuse people. I don't want people to think anything different than what that actually says. You have to put it in context. Okay, so something that Alex Jones mentioned on Crowder's episode yesterday, he said to look up Obama's re-education camps. So I did. And I'll have to see. Which one was it? Okay. Okay. This is the first one. This is from Independent Centennial. It's called True Story of Obama's Internment Camps, Trump's Concentration Camps. I haven't read this. This is going to be the first time reading through it. I have a couple of them, though. So this was written by M. Dowling, and this was in 2018. So it says, the president is being accused of separating families at the border, but it is happening because of Obama's catch and release policies. It's not Trump's policy. Democrats won't fix it because they are using the issue as a talking point to take over Congress in November. The media is helping them misrepresent the situation. In fact, Obama staff set up internment camps and ordered catch and release. Children were put in cages, but no longer. They are sent to very nice centers with trained professionals. It's not ideal, but it's hardly a bad place. In fact, our DHS website informs illegal aliens how to evade the law safely. So, under Obama's policies, and the Democrat congressman admits it, a Democratic congressman dropped a bombshell on Saturday, admitting during an interview with CNN that the migrant child crisis we kept very quiet under the Obama administration. Representative Henry Cuellar of Texas admitted he knew the Obama admin attempted to cover up the child migrant crisis in 2013 and 14, which was exposed when a photo of two children sleeping inside a cage went viral. It was kept very quiet under the Obama admin. There were large numbers of people coming in. The Obama admin was trying to keep this quiet, Cuellar said. Senator Marco Rubio blames Obama, and he is no fan of Donald Trump's. So this is not just some plan to cruelly torture people, he said during a visit to Sarasota on Saturday. The Obama admin was just releasing everyone, the parents and the kids, and a significant percentage of the people they released never came back, never showed up for a hearing, never heard from them again. Oh, imagine that. You give them a court date to show up and release them into the country with no way to find out where they're at, to track them, and they don't show up? No way would they ever do that. Come on. And that's a magnet. These poor people are desperate, and these trafficking groups are telling them, we can take you to America, and all you have to do is turn yourself in, and you'll quickly be released, and then you're done. And that's causing more people to come. So what the Trump admin is doing, and the president campaigned on it, they're not going to release the adults. We're not allowed to hold the kids by law, and frankly, we shouldn't. There's no family shelter capability either, so that's why this is happening. Rubio says after the children are released from a temporary shelter, they will be turned over to family members in the U.S. or taken to a foster home. Obama's experimental internment camps. In June 2014, when the Washington Post reported that illegal immigrants, including thousands of women and children, stream into South Texas, it was 9 months late when the same paper reported that Obama's border agents were tossing some of those kids into internment camps as an experiment. The policy was called the Juvenile Referral Process. The program was the creation of Robert Harris, who at the time U.S. Customs and Border Protection Commander of the Laredo sector. Harris believed holding certain young Mexicans, believed to be working for cartels, in detention serves to get these kids out of the smuggling enterprise. It was completely lawless and simply based on his own ill-conceived views. The lies, exaggerations, and distortions just kept coming because this is the latest Democrat talking point. The Democrat Socialist Party will say anything, do anything to win. The parents are breaking the law. Just as families are separated when parents are arrested, so is the case here. These naysayers want open borders. The cartels are bringing these families and children in. Parents are often posing as parents. The parents and the cartels are guilty, not Trump. First of all, the widely spread story of a mother and a breastfeeding baby being separated never happened. An attorney at the far left Texas Civil Rights Project spread that story around via CNN. The spokesman for DHS, Carlos Diaz, told CNN, "Nothing could be further from the truth, and these allegations are unsubstantiated. Illegal alien children have a higher standard of living than U.S. poor. Secondly, migrant children who cross into the U.S. either alone or with adults have a higher standard of living once they are put into federal care than the more than 13 million American children who are living in poverty across the country. In fiscal year 2017, the federal government referred nearly 41,000 unaccompanied minor border crossers to the Unaccompanied Alien Children Program, which is facilitated by the Office of Refugee Resettlement. Each minor costs the federal taxpayer $34,660 annually, while the 13 million plus American children in poverty get $24,500 a year. Overall, about $1.4 billion is spent on unaccompanied minor border crossers every year, which American taxpayers foot the bill for, as Breitbart News reported. This is one of the bedrooms in a child shelter. And we can look at some more pictures here. Seems to be a pretty decent place. They've got TVs. They do school. They feed them, obviously. Looks like a pretty decent place to me. Okay, so the Lid blog explains that DHS is telling illegals how to come in illegally. If you are an illegal immigrant, a criminally trespassing foreigner who is about to sneak into the U.S., there is one website you need to visit. Look at this before you cross the border. That would be the Border Patrol's website. In the site's facts, it teaches trespassers where they can go to avoid capture by the Border Patrol. Safety and sanctuary can generally be found at the schools, churches, hospitals, and protests where Customs and Border Protection agents are barred under a sensitive locations policy from carrying out their duty of enforcing border security. In fact, the agency's website states that actions at such locations can only be undertaken in an emergency or with a supervisor's approval. Well, how about that? So it's a sensitive locations policy. This is straight from, oh, I'm not authorized to access that page. Access was denied to me. And that website is no longer existing. But it says the policies are meant to ensure that ICE and CBP officers and agents exercise sound judgment when enforcing federal law at or focus on sensitive locations to enhance the public understanding and trust, and to ensure that people seeking to participate in activities or utilize services provided at any sensitive location are free to do so without fear or hesitation, the government website states in both English and Spanish. On its website, the Border Patrol lists the locations where criminally trespassing foreigners can find sanctuary. I mean, it already told us, though, that it's churches, hospitals, schools, things like that. What the far left Democrats and never Trumpers are saying. Former Obama, Bush, Clinton, CIA, and NSA chief Michael Hayden on Saturday compared President Trump's immigration policies to that of Nazi Germany. He did it in an extremely exaggerated and offensive Twitter post. It says, "Let the record show." Oh no. It says other governments have separated mothers and children, Hardin wrote next to a black and white photo of Auschwitz. John Cordillo tweeted, "Let the record show that General M. Hayden considers the hardworking men and women of DHS, ICE, and CBP who put their lives on the line day in and day out equivalent to the Nazi SS. Disgraceful." Democratic strategist Dave Jacobson trashed President Trump on CNN, invoking Adolf Hitler. "I don't think it equates to duct tape by allowing children to be with their families," Jacobson argued. "Look, bottom line, Donald Trump increasingly looks like Hitler in Nazi Germany. These look like concentration camps. Then we have fake Republican Michael Steele calling the centers concentration camps. The female commentator thinks our country is a democracy, not a republic. That is an important distinction for these far left people. It really is. So that was internment camps. But as I was reading that, I don't think that that is exactly what Alex Jones was talking about. Regardless, still very interesting information. Um, but if you look here, this might be what he was actually talking about. So this is from American Media Group, written by Medea Greer, and this was written in 2020. That's the beginning of the year. Ayers plan for American re-education camps and the need to kill millions. Very interesting. So FBI Special Informant Larry Grathwohl, who penetrated the Weathermen underground of Bill Ayers, told former FBI agent and informant and Dave's late friend Larry Grathwohl that he believed that when the communist takeover happened, he would have to incarcerate 50 million Americans into re-education camps and exterminate 25 million of them. Larry was an FBI special informant who had penetrated the underground and became a member in order to take down the organization by getting Bill Ayers and his wife Bernadine Dorn arrested. This is the part that I would play the video of Larry recounting what Ayers told him about future FEMA camps, but YouTube recently took down the video because it violates YouTube's policy on hate speech. Shopping malls can be easily converted to FEMA detention facilities. The Walmart conversions to FEMA camps and the 2012 agreement between every professional sports league, which allows DHS to use their facilities to be used as FEMA camps in the times of emergency. The shopping malls conversions were part of an agreement entered into by Simon Properties, the largest owner of malls in North America. This purchase, hydrogen cyanide, marks that the third time in 12 months FEMA will have used foreign distributors to procure lethal items that could be used to maim or kill law-abiding Americans. In January, FEMA received a shipment of 500 Chinese-made smart guillotines, and in March, they secretly ordered thousands of guillotine blades from a Mexican metal factory in Juarez. So, smart guillotines. They ordered 102,000 boxcars with shackles and guillotines. Why are modern guillotines on military bases throughout North America? Okay, this may turn into something totally different than what I expected today's episode to be. Um, Bill Ayers, you will remember, wrote Obama's fictional autobiography, Dreams from My Father, and Ayers' family supported and groomed Obama for the presidency from the time he was a teenager. It appears that Chicago communist Frank Marshall Davis handed Obama off to the Ayers Group in Chicago in the early 1980s. Bernadine Dorn's fingerprints are also all over Obama's course syllabus when he was an adjunct lecturer at the University of Chicago. And of course, Obama's entire adult life and political career has had Ayers and Dorn as the main enablers and drivers. I also want to see what this is, the 50 million Americans into re-education camps. So it says, why did the U.S. government purchase 30,000 guillotines? And then it reads Revelation chapter 20, verses 4 and 6. Let's see what that verse is. It says, And I saw thrones, and they sat upon them, and judgment was given unto them. And I saw the souls of them that were beheaded for the witness of Jesus, and for the word of God, and which had not worshipped the beast, neither his image, neither had received his mark upon their foreheads or in their hands, and they lived and reigned with Christ 1,000 years. But the rest of the dead lived not again until the 1,000 years were finished. This is the first resurrection. Blessed and holy is he that hath part in the first resurrection. On such the second death hath no power, but they shall be priests of God and of Christ, and shall reign with him 1,000 years. Okay. The use of guillotines for governmental purposes was lobbied for and passed in the U.S. Congress. The information we received is that 15,000 are currently stored in Georgia and 15,000 in Montana. Are the beheadings by Muslims today meant to desensitize us against U.S. government beheadings in the future? Think about this. Why does the U.S. government need 30,000 guillotines and over 600 million rounds of hollow point bullets? There are over 800 prison camps in the United States, all fully operational and ready to receive prisoners. They are all staffed and even surrounded by full-time guards, but they are all empty. These camps are to be operated by FEMA, should martial law need to be implemented in the U.S., and all it would take is a presidential signature on a proclamation and the Attorney General's signature on a warrant to which a list of names is attached. Ask yourself if you really want to be on the list. FEMA has three-layer boxcars for transporting shackled prisoners to the more than 800 empty and guarded concentration camps across the USA, with 20,000 new prisoner boxcars and 40-foot railroad containers arriving in Oregon from China for our forests for planned martial law in time for military exercises for martial law. My research and documentation on the boxcars and shackles go far beyond Phil's interview. Long before I heard of him, I had eyewitnesses' information on these boxcars. A van full of eyewitnesses, missionaries traveling across America to evangelize and pray, stumbled across these boxcars in Montana near Columbia Falls and Glacier. They described boxcars, in this case painted black, with shackles welded into them and a modern guillotine at the head of each boxcar inside. As they were photographing mountain scenery, they decided to follow railroad tracks into the wilderness so as to not get lost. This is how they came upon these boxcars with shackles. I later received a report from Lee Harrington of Valier, Montana, who was a professional metal worker. He told me how in Glasgow, Montana, summer youth workers were employed to weld shackles into boxcars in that operation. They were then shipped west to Glacier and stored on remote sidetracks. Passing through the Blackfoot Indian Reservation in Cut Bank, a local Blackfoot Indian, George Bullcap, spotted these strange boxcars. When I interviewed local patriots in Columbia Falls, they confirmed that hunters often stumbled upon such boxcars and remote train spurs in that wilderness region. I then traveled to Portland, Oregon, and lectured in the home of an actual employee of Gunderson Steel Fabrication. The wife of this high level executive called this meeting personally to make a public admission. In the meeting were other Gunderson employees who had witnessed the prisoner boxcars and the higher than normal three-floor, three-tier prisoner boxcars. She admitted that her husband finally told her that Gunderson was under secret contract from the U.S. government to produce these prisoner boxcars. She also admitted that Gunderson had a satellite factory for boxcars with shackles operation in Texas. I called Colonel Jim Ammerman in Texas, famous military patriot lecturer against martial law, and told him about this. He replied, "A friend of mine who is a metal welder called me recently and said he had gone to apply for a job and offered in Texas for welding. When he was told that it involved welding shackles into boxcars, he declined the job." I later interviewed Russian immigrants in this area who admitted that some of their people were working at Gunderson, and one young man, Sasha, admitted working on prisoner boxcars and described them completely to his Russian Christian friends there. The Russian community now knows about them and is very afraid of the implications. Many Russians still work there. Another source, Watchdog, a retired military vet with the Watchdog Group, described yet another boxcar with shackles operations in New Hampshire with three-tiered boxcars fitted with shackles. Metal worker Lee Harrington also described 20,000 Chinese prisoner boxcars with shackles and modern guillotines in the form of 40-foot railroad containers coming into America via the West Coast. They were ordered by the American government through a senator who visited China and ordered these items. Workers unloading them became suspicious and began to investigate and discovered these horrors from China. Such 40-foot cargo containers from China are now piled up along the West Coast, especially around Long Beach Naval Shipyard, turned over to the Chinese. I received constant reports across America regarding these types of prisoner boxcars from former radio listeners and patriots across America and Canada. Recently, a former high level Satanist from the mountains of North Carolina, now a Christian and receiving discipleship, admitted that boxcars with shackles were indeed in the mountains of North Carolina and waiting for the hour of martial law. Asheville, North Carolina, he warned that many patriots and Christians arrested and secured into these prisoner boxcars under martial law will never even make it to the death camps, that many will be tortured and sacrificed once restrained in these prisoners' boxcars. Here are just a few executive orders associated with FEMA that would suspend the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. These executive orders have been on record for nearly 30 years and could be enacted by the stroke of a president's pen. You have Executive Order 10990 allows the government to take over all modes of transportation and control of highways and seaports. Executive Order 10995 allows the government to seize and control the communication media. Executive Order 10997 allows the government to take over all electrical power, gas, petroleum, fuels, and minerals. Executive Order 10998 allows the government to take over all food resources and farms. Executive Order 11,000 allows the government to mobilize civilians into working brigades under government supervision. Executive Order 11,001 allows the government to take over all health, education, and welfare functions. 11,002 designates the Postmaster General to operate a national registration of all persons. 11,003 allows the government to take over all airports and aircraft, including commercial aircraft. 11,004 allows the Housing and Finance Authority to relocate communities, build new housing with public funds, designate areas to be abandoned, and establish new locations for populations. 11,005 allows the government to take over railroads, inland waterways, and public storage facilities. 1151 specifies the responsibility of the Office of Emergency Planning and gives authorization to put all executive orders into effect in times of increased international tensions and economic or financial crisis. 11,310 grants authority to the Department of Justice to enforce the plans set out in executive orders, to institute industrial support, to establish judicial and legislative liaison, to control all aliens, to operate penal and correctional institutions, and to advise and assist the President. 11049 assigns emergency preparedness function to federal departments and agencies, consolidating 21 operative executive orders issued over a 15-year period. And 11921 allows the Federal Emergency Preparedness Agency to develop plans to establish control over the mechanisms of production and distribution of energy sources, wages, salaries, credit, and the flow of money in the U.S. financial institution in any undefined national emergency. It also provides that when a state of emergency is declared by the President, Congress cannot review the action for 6 months. There are over 800 prison camps in the U.S., all fully operational and ready to receive prisoners. They are all staffed. Okay, so we already read this part. Yeah. So, will asking questions be outlawed next? Probably. Says the camps all have railroad facilities as well as roads leading to and from the detention facilities. Many also have an airport nearby. The majority of the camps can house a population of 20,000 prisoners. Currently, the largest of these facilities is just outside of Fairbanks, Alaska. The Alaskan facility is a massive mental health facility and can hold approximately 2 million people. Will asking questions be outlawed next? Several instances have recently been reported where those that were asking questions that came too near the untold truth were removed from the press conferences and from the public's ear. Also, those that wanted to speak to the press were detained and other in prison, locked in a psychiatric hospital, slaughtered, though through make-believe suicides, or discredited. Why are we all in denial over these possibilities? Didn't we hear about prison camps in Germany and even in the US during World War II? Japanese individuals were rounded up and placed in internment camps during the duration of the war. Where was their freedom? You don't think it could happen to you? Obviously, those rounded up and killed didn't think it could happen to them either. How could decent people have witnessed such atrocities and still said nothing? Are we going to do the same here as they cart off one by one those individuals who are taking a stand for the rights of the citizens as they expose the truth happening behind the scenes? Are we all going to sit there and wonder what happened to this country of ours? Where did we go wrong? How could we let that happen? Yeah, it makes you wonder. But you even have a leaked U.S. Army document that outlines a plan for re-education camps in America. And it's entitled FM 3-39.40 Internment and Resettlement Operations. And it was originally released on a restricted basis to the DoD in February 2010, but has now been leaked online. And you say, well, what does 2010 have to do with anything? Well, just because it's 2010 doesn't mean that they didn't start this process way, way earlier. The government always wants to have complete dominance and control over the people. If you believe the Bible, you know that the people that have been leading us, the ones that you know are pure evil, are leading us down the path to a one world government. That is what the Bible says is going to happen. That is what's going to happen. Whether or not we're alive to see that take place, I have no idea. All I know is we're seeing the stage being set. Absolutely. Um, so it looks like it's a pretty long document. It's 326 pages. I can put that link in there. But it says the manual outlines policies for processing detainees into internment camps both globally and in the U.S. International agencies like the UN and the Red Cross are named as partners in addition to domestic federal agencies, including the Department of Homeland Security and FEMA. The document makes it clear that the policies apply within U.S. territory and involve DoD support to U.S. civil authorities for domestic emergencies and for designated law enforcement and other activities, including the man-made disasters, accidents, terrorist attacks, and incidents in the U.S. and its territories. The manual states these operations may be performed as domestic civil support operations and adds that the authority to approve resettlement such operations within U.S. territories would require a special exception to the, what is it, Posse Comitatus Act? I have no idea. Which can be obtained via the president invoking his executive authority. The document also makes reference to identifying detainees using their social security number. Aside from enemy combatants and other classifications of detainees, the manual includes the designation of civilian detainees. In other words, citizens who are detained for security reasons, for protection, or because he or she committed an offense against the detaining power. The manual lists the following roles that are designated to the PSYOP team: identifies malcontents, trained agitators, and political leaders within the facility who may try to organize resistance or create disturbances, develops and executes indoctrination programs to reduce or remove antagonistic attitudes, identifies political activists, provides loudspeaker support such as administrative announcements and facility instructions when necessary, helps the military police commander control detainee and DC populations during emergencies, plans and executes a PSYOP program that produces an understanding and appreciation of U.S. policies and actions. So in December last year, it was also revealed that Halliburton subsidiary KBR is seeking subcontractor to staff and outfit emergency environment camps located in 5 regions of the U.S. In 2006, KBR was contracted by Homeland Security to build detention centers designed to deal with an emergency influx of immigrants into the U.S. Rex 84, short for Readiness Exercise 1984, was established under the pretext of a mass exodus of illegal aliens crossing the Mexican-U.S. border, the same pretense used in the language of the KBR request for services. Under the indefinite detention provision of the National Defense Authorization Act, which was signed by Obama on New Year's Eve, American citizens can be kidnapped and detained indefinitely without trial. You know, that's also what Abraham Lincoln used to do during the Civil War. Look, I don't put it past our government to do it, okay? I know it's coming. I don't know when, but I don't put it past our government to do this stuff. So it's actually something very interesting to look into. I don't claim any of this to be absolute fact, but you can go take a look at all the documents. I can link them all below. You can go take a look at it, read it for yourself, and see what you think. Um, but the one thing that I wanted to show you, based on all of that, you now have Pelosi saying the quiet part out loud when she calls the Build Back Better agenda Obama's agenda. She said, keep government open to address the full Obama agenda of building back better. That's what she said. Let's take a listen.
Keep government open. We have to do those imminently, more imminently even, to address the full Obama agenda of building back better and I love to say building back better.
I mean, just absolutely says it out loud. It's, it says, now, was that too much adult libation for lunch that made her misspeak? Or was she really saying something there? It had a lot of people talking because there's often speculation on who the people are behind Biden. It even trended on Twitter. Obama had previously joked himself that if he could get someone to front for him, he would. He said, I used to say if I can make an arrangement where I had a stand-in or front man or front woman and they had an earpiece in and I was just in my basement in my sweats looking through the stuff and I could sort of deliver the lines while someone else was doing all the talking and ceremony, I'd be fine with that because I found the work fascinating. In my opinion, Obama really would have picked anyone other than Biden because he knows his issues. I think Obama realized how tenuous Biden was, but I have no doubt since some of the same folks like Susan Rice, who was the eyes and ears for Obama, are now working for Biden, that Obama has his influence. There's no doubt that he is pushing for the Build Back Better agenda passed through Congress, as he himself said on Good Morning America yesterday. He's actually going out to stump for it to get through because he's not really sure that Biden can get it through without him. The concepts, of course, are not just Biden's, but long-standing Democratic agenda items. Build Back Better isn't even Biden's term. UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson and others used it before Biden did. And I even covered this on a podcast way at the beginning, that the Build Back Better term actually comes from the World Economic Forum, which is the leading organization to push us all into one world government. Okay, so some of the other stuff that Alex Jones brought up was, and he had all of the information and the sources that you could go and look it up. And this he talked about, this is from the CDC website, the interim operational considerations for implementing the shielding approach to prevent COVID-19 infections in humanitarian settings. Now, I talked about this before too, way early on during the pandemic, and they were called the green zones. So if you didn't hear that episode, that's what this is about. And it says this document presents considerations from the perspective of the U.S. CDC for implementing the shielding approach in humanitarian settings as outlined in guidance documents focused on camps, displaced populations, and low resource settings. This approach has never been documented and has raised questions and concerns among humanitarian partners who support response activities in these settings. The purpose of this document is to highlight potential implementation challenges of the shielding approach from CDC's perspective and guide thinking around implementation in the absence of empirical data. Considerations are based on current evidence known about the transmission and severity of the Rona and may need to be revised as more information becomes available. So, what is the shielding approach? The shielding approach aims to reduce the number of severe COVID 19 cases by limiting contact between individuals at higher risk of developing severe disease and the general population. High risk individuals would be temporarily relocated to safe or green zones established at the household, neighborhood, camp sector, or community level. Depending. Oh, I lost my spot. Hang on. Where was I at? Depending on the context and setting. They would have minimal contact with family members and other low risk residents. Current evidence indicates that older adults and people of any age who have serious underlying medical conditions are at higher risk for severe illness from the virus. So, in theory, shielding may serve its objective to protect high risk populations from disease and death. However, implementation of the approach necessitates strict adherence to protocol. Inadvertent introduction of the virus into a green zone may result in rapid transmission among the most vulnerable populations the approach is trying to protect. So it says a summary of the shielding approach described by Favas is shown in Table 1. So you have the household level, which is a specific room or area designated for high risk individuals. Um, Low risk members should not enter the green zone. If entry is necessary, it should be done only by healthy individuals after washing hands and using face coverings. Neighborhood level be a designated shelter or group of shelters, maximum 5 to 10 households within a small camp or area where high risk members are grouped together. Neighbors swap households to accommodate high risk individuals. And then the camp sector level would be a group of shelters such as schools, community buildings within a camper sector, maximum 50 high risk individuals per single green zone, where high risk individuals are physically isolated together. One entry point is used for exchange of food, supplies, etc. A meeting area is used for residents and visitors to interact while practicing physical distancing 2 meters, no movement into or outside the green zone. So it says each green zone has a dedicated latrine bathing facility, blah, 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 blah. We don't care about all that. The shielding approach outlines the general logistics of implementation, the who, what, where, and how. However, there may be additional logistical challenges to implementing these strategies as a result of unavailable commodities, transport restrictions, limited staff capacity, and availability to meet the increased needs. The approach does not address the potential emotional, social, and cultural psychological impact for separated individuals, nor for the households with separated members. Additional considerations to address these challenges are presented below. So, and it just has a bunch of other stuff. It's really ridiculous, to be honest. Says the shielding approach is an ambitious undertaking which may prove effective in preventing virus infection among high risk populations if well managed. While the premise is based on mitigation strategies used in the United Kingdom, there is no empirical evidence whether this approach will increase, decrease, or have no effect on morbidity and mortality during the virus epidemic in various humanitarian settings. So there's no data of whether it's going to do anything at all, but they want to go ahead and do it anyway. Why? If there's no data that it's going to work, why would you do it? But not only that, it's talking about taking people out of their homes, kicking them out, making them live somewhere else, and using their homes to house people. It'll never work. You're going to have people end up getting hurt because people aren't going to go for that. It's absolutely ridiculous. Now, I don't. Oh, man. Okay. I'm going to have to register so I can stink and read this. Okay, that was easy. Now, this article was written just in September 21st. Wuhan scientists plan to release coronavirus particles into cave bats, leaked papers reveal. So it says Wuhan and U.S. scientists were planning to release enhanced airborne coronavirus particles into Chinese bat populations to inoculate them against diseases that could jump to humans, leaked grant proposals dating from 2018 show. New documents showed that just 18 months before the first outbreak, or the first cases appeared, researchers had submitted plans to release skin penetrating nanoparticles and aerosols containing novel chimeric spike proteins of bat coronaviruses into cave bats in is that Yunnan, China? I don't know if that's how you say it. They also plan to create chimeric viruses genetically enhanced to infect humans more easily and requested $14 million from the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, or DARPA, to fund the work. Papers confirmed as genuine by a former member of the Trump admin show they were hoping to introduce human specific cleavage sites to bat coronaviruses, which would make it easier for the virus to enter human cells. When the virus was first genetically sequenced, scientists were puzzled about how the virus had evolved such a human specific adaptation at the cleavage site on the spike protein, which is the reason it is so infectious. The documents were released by Drastic, the web based investigations team set up by scientists from across the world to look into the origins of the virus. In a statement, Drastic said, quote, "Given that we find in this proposal a discussion of the planned introduction of human-specific cleavage sites, a review by the wider scientific community of the plausibility of artificial insertion is warranted." End quote. The proposal also included plans to mix high-risk natural coronavirus strains with more infectious but less dangerous varieties. The bid was submitted by British zoologist Peter Daszak, of course it was, of EcoHealth Alliance, the US-based organization which has closely worked with the Wuhan Institute of Virology researching bat coronaviruses. Team members included Dr. Shi Zhengli, the WIV researcher dubbed Batwoman, picture below, as well as U.S. researchers from the University of North Carolina and the United States Geological Survey National Wildlife Health Center. DARPA refused to fund the work, saying, quote, "It is clear that the proposed project led by Peter Daszak could have put local communities at risk, and warned that team had not properly considered the dangers of enhancing the virus, the gain-of-function research, or releasing a jab by air." Can't say the word, I'll get taken off. YouTube overlords. Grant documents show that the team also had some concerns about the vaccine program and said, okay, let me restart that for YouTube. Grant documents show that the team also had some concerns about the JAB program and said they would conduct educational outreach so that there is a public understanding of what we are doing and why we are doing it, particularly because of the practice of bat consumption in the region. Angus Dalglish, professor of oncology at St. George's University of London, who struggled to get work published showing that the Wuhan Institute of Virology had been carrying out gain-of-function work for years before the pandemic, said the research may have gone ahead even without the funding. Quote, this is clearly a gain of function, engineering the cleavage site and polishing the new viruses to enhance human cell infectability in more than one cell line, he said. Daszak was also behind a letter published in The Lancet last year, which effectively shut down scientific debate into the origins of the virus. Viscount Ridley, who has co-authored a book on the origin of the virus due for release in November, and who was frequently called for a further investigation into what caused the pandemic in the House of Lords, said, quote, for more than a year, I tried repeatedly to ask questions of Peter Daszak with no response. Now it turns out he had authored this vital piece of information about virus work in Wuhan, but refused to share it with the world. I'm furious. So should the world be. Peter Daszak and EcoHealth Alliance proposed injecting deadly chimeric bat coronaviruses collected by the Wuhan Institute of Virology into humanized and batified mice and much, much more. End quote. A virus researcher from the who wished to remain anonymous, said it was alarming that the grant proposal included plans to enhance the more deadly disease of Middle East Respiratory Syndrome, or MERS. The scary part is that we're making infections chimeric MERS viruses, the source said. These viruses have a fatality rate of over 30%, which is at least an order of magnitude more deadly than SARS-CoV-2. If one of their receptor replacements made MERS spread similarly while maintaining its lethality, this pandemic would be nearly apocalyptic. EcoHealth Alliance and the Wuhan Institute of Virology have been approached for comment, and I'm assuming that they never gave a comment about it. I wish, though, I wish that it had a link to the leaked document. Would be nice. I don't know. That would have been nice. Okay, moving on because I have a lot more to share. Okay, so we did that, and this, what was this? I think this was from the first half. Yeah, this, I'll link this document. I saved this document for y'all for the first half when we talked about um, protecting the unaccompanied alien children. Um, Now, if you look at this just says in 2030 you'll own nothing and be happy about it. I've talked about this many, many times, but this is the incredible predictions from the World Economic Forum's mastermind about life in 2030. So it says the headline to this story is from Klaus Schwab, the founder and executive chairman of the World Economic Forum, the international organization for public private cooperation. He is the mastermind behind the World Economic Forum that organizes the well known Davos Summit, which is where they all come together and they all talk about how they want to take over the world and put us all under the same government, right? I mean, that's basically what it is. There's probably more to it, but that's the gist of it. The headline is a prediction of this gentleman from 2016 about the world of 2030. In a period when all global feel the pains and challenges of an accelerated change at a massive scale in every aspect of our lives, such a prediction will surely relieve your anxious mind, especially when it comes from such a prestigious individual. One thing I learned in life is to attain a positive skepticism. It means to be in an endless search for answers in this grand school of life and to challenge every answer you find. That is the only way to grow and develop a synthesis from the dance of thesis and antithesis. In a sense, I would be happy to share Mr. Schwab's 8 predictions and approach every bullet point with some comments. Number 1, you'll own nothing and be happy about it. That is an adamant one. Since the early humans, we wanted to own something, either a cave, a land, a flock of animals, tools, furniture, a house, etc. Humans wanted to own like how animals mark the borders of their territory. Perhaps this is an instinct we cannot resist. It gives us the feeling of security and stability amidst the volatile, unclear, complex, and ambiguous life characteristics. Owning is like leaning our back to a stone when fighting with an enemy. We avoid our basic fears and create a comfort zone. However, since the end of the gold standard and the start of a global money printing experiment at a global scale in 1971, while strengthening the USD's global reserve money status, citizens of the world have become the victims of an endless debt cycle. In the system, you can print more money than the amount of gold and silver in stock, which creates inflation and more debt. The lands, mortgages, and other financial tools gave you the riches of the old kings and aristocrats, but at the expense of stealing your freedom. The current system created economic slavery, a different version of the post Renaissance slavery that came with the colonization of underdeveloped cultures and nations by the technology and financially developed countries. The more you buy with debt, the worse and longer slavery is in modern times. This 2030 prediction pointing to the end of ownership means buying everything with more debt. Moreover, if everyone will rent everything from homes to furniture, computers to clothes, there will still be some owners of these goods and services. They will surely be the giant corporations that exist today or will be part of our lives soon. What if they do not let you rent anymore or increase the prices? What if you have to sacrifice your freedom to improve your credit history to continue renting? That new system could quickly end up being a control and manipulation strategy to create a new wave of unconscious slaves who should act like good boys and girls to buy what they want. Is this not like the continuity of the medieval ages feudal system? Think about this. What would you want? Well, I'll tell you what that is actually reminiscence of. It's reminiscence of taking the mark of the beast. Honestly, you won't own anything, and you won't be able to get any goods, services, food, water, probably a home. You would have to do that. Number two, the U.S. won't be the world's leading superpower. Of course it won't. That is an interesting and strong prediction, but it is possible. Until World War II, the UK was the dominant global power, and the US took over after the war. Before England, Netherlands, Spain, Ottomans, Mongols, Persians, Macedonians, Romans, Egyptians, and Sumerians. Over the last 20 years, China has been getting stronger every year and has become a global power. Switching to the petro yuan system in March 2018 is an important sign of their rising power. By 2030, China is expected to dominate the AI industry and have the world's second biggest GDP. That's because they steal everybody else's technology. They have a lot of cash and are buying companies, mines, and properties worldwide to position them to be a global player. The world is currently a politically unipolar arena, but is becoming a multipolar arena. After the collapse of the Soviet Union socialist republics, Russia has transformed its financial status and pursued its global goals. European Union has become more significant but still depends on the US for military power against Russia. Brexit is a threat that can spread to other countries. However, Germany still continues to be the dominant power in the EU and is becoming a global player each day. The world is becoming a multipolar arena for sure. You won't die waiting for an organ donor. They will be made by 3D printers. Okay. 3D technologies are becoming more available and less expensive each year. We've started printing essential parts, meat, food, tools, buildings, and even some organs. Who knows what's next? I am sure that it would be possible to print even the human body in the future. Imagine a future world where it would be impossible to print any human organ and transplant it to the patient. We do not need donors anymore. That means no one will suffer waiting for an organ or an organ not matching the patient. That would be wonderful if only if that technology could be available to everyone instead of the wealthy elite. Yeah, that's true. That is definitely true. Sorry, I was eating a cough drop. That's so true because if you can't afford to do it, then you just can't do it. You'll eat much less meat. We've already heard Biden say this, that it was going to be a luxury item. Meat will be an occasional treat, not a staple, for the good of the environment and our health. 3D printing can help us print meat and avoid killing animals. I'm sure scientists will fix the taste. Recently in Israel, scientists printed meat, but at a very high cost, $3,000. That will surely reduce. Remember the high price of CD writers 20 years ago, and now they are not only an old technology, but also cost less than $50 to buy a good one? As food sources become more limited, we could easily be forced to eat less and compensate with alternative ingredients and beverages. 5. A billion people will be displaced by climate change. This one is an alarm signal. Since the global temperatures were first recorded in 1881, the world's temperature has increased by 1.2 Celsius centigrade. That last 5 years were the hottest years since 1881. The annual average global temperature plot shows a significant increase over the previous 20 years, unlike before. This trend suggests that global warming will end up with 2 Celsius centigrade by 2030, which means a significant climate change. As the weather patterns change, our civilization will be impacted seriously. If global warming exceeds 3 Celsius centigrade, then it is the point of no return for major climate changes that will devastate our lives. I don't care to continue reading that because I don't even fall for the climate change junk. 6. Polluters will have to pay to emit carbon dioxide. There will be a global price on carbon. This will help make fossil fuel history. This 2030 global warming threat is severe. If a company or country pollutes our only home in the universe, it will be penalized for sure in a new world and soon be forced to even close and shut down. A significant portion of Tesla's profits this year in 2020 result from carbon emissions licenses they earned and sold to other companies. The trend has already started. Okay, but don't we emit carbon dioxide when we breathe? Does that mean we're also going to have to pay a penalty for polluting the air just for breathing? I wouldn't doubt it. 7. You could be preparing to go to Mars. I'm not even going to waste my time reading that because we're not going to Mars. 8. Western values will have been tested to the breaking point. Checks and balances that underpin our democracies must not be forgotten. Imagine 1 billion people moving from various parts of the world to another. Add the pressure of finding clean water and feeding 8 billion people despite global warming. Consider the complexity of trade wars in a multipolar world to control limited resources such as petrol, money, water, food, fertile land, strategic logistics, corridors, etc. All these and much more can create utmost tension, triggering regional fights, battles, and wars either on the field or on the cyber arenas or strategically behind the scenes. Some people say that World War III has already started and we are in it. Yet this is a new type of war, as if to prove Sun Tzu correct. The best commander is the one who wins without fighting. Yeah. It is such a chaotic world. All our ideals, well designed, art, democratic rules, high standards, moral values will be tested in extreme conditions. It is easy to respect each other when you have a good income, a lovely house, 2 cars, good education for your children, in a civilized city with clear rules and regulations with most of the people adhering to them. Such a balance means stability and predictability that gives comfort to any human. What if this equilibrium is broken and the ideal world is at risk? Anyone would feel uncomfortable and take action to protect herself and the loved ones like a mother bird watching her children. In such turbulent times comes the mega changes in history. The tolerance and mutual understanding in such times drop significantly and people switch to survival mode. That kind of tough times drop all the masks and unveil the real face of everyone, the people around you, your inner circle. You may even find yourself challenging your trust, intentions, and faith. Look at the pandemic's effects and the economic crisis within the first 3 quarters of the year. Protests increased, people rallied on the streets, and people with opposing ideas quarreled and fought. Unlike the modern top 20 or 30 countries in the world, billions of people still live with little money with the risk of hunger and health problems today, even in the 21st century. Many Westerners are not aware of that unless they happen to visit these places and experience it at first hand. They are not ready for such unexpected changes and social problems. We can be as healthy as the world we live in, and the weakest change shows our consciousness level. So we better start working right now to share whatever good and useful we have in hand with each other. Anyway, so that was just some of his predictions, and I've talked about it before. And not only that, but Alex Jones went over the Cloward Piven strategy, which I've already done an episode on that before. And the other thing that I wanted to show was this is from academia.edu. I have to go back up to get the title of it. This is Scenarios for the Future of Technology and International Development. And the main thing that he pointed out, Alex Jones pointed out, was the lockstep. So it says, once crossed, these axes create a matrix of 4 very different futures. So let's start with smart scramble, which is an economically depressed world in which individuals and communities develop localized makeshift solutions to a growing set of problems. You have hack attack, an economically unstable and shock prone world in which governments weaken, criminals thrive, and dangerous innovations emerge. Clever together, a world in which highly coordinated and successful strategies emerge for addressing both urgent and entrenched worldwide issues. And then you have lockstep, a world of tighter top down government control and more authoritarian leadership with limited innovation and growing citizen pushback. And the reason why I think that that's very important, because we are kind of in the lockstep state right now. If you think about it, we have the government from the top down trying to absolutely control everything we do. So here it says it is possible to discipline and control some societies for some time, but not the whole world all the time. So I think it's very worthwhile to read these. If you look at the headlines in lockstep in 2010 or 2013, quarantine restrictions, in-person contact, cellular networks overloaded. In 2015, the intercontinental trade hit by strict pathogen controls. Then you have 2017, Italy addresses immigrant caregiver gap with robots. 2018, will Africa's embrace of authoritarian capitalism a la China continue? 2022, so now we're predicting Vietnam to require a solar panel on every home. 2023, proliferating trade networks in Eastern and Southern Africa strengthen regional ties. And 2028, African leaders for repeat of Nigeria's 2026 government collapse. So now they're just kind of playing a role based on what's done in the past, and they're predicting the future. And then they talk about the role of philanthropy with lockstep, technology, scanners using advanced functional magnetic resonance imaging technology become the norm at airports and other public areas to detect abnormal behavior that may indicate antisocial intent. In the aftermath of pandemic scares, smarter packaging for food and beverages is applied first by big companies and producers in a business to business environment and then adopted for individual products and consumers. New diagnostics are developed to detect communicable diseases. Telepresence technologies respond to the demand for less expensive, lower bandwidth, sophisticated communication systems for populations whose travel is restricted. Driven by protectionism and national security concerns, nations create their own independent, regionally defined IT networks, mimicking China's firewalls. Governments have varying degrees of success in policing internet traffic, but these efforts nevertheless fracture the World Wide Web. So then it talks about your life in lockstep. I guess it's a made up story. I don't know. And it goes through all of them. It's very worthwhile. I'm going to leave the link in the description so you can go take a look at it. But the interesting thing is that this was written in 2010, and it is by the Rockefeller Foundation and the Global Business Network, which is a member of the Monitor Group. It's very interesting that the Rockefeller Foundation is actually involved in this. And I'm telling you, they are some corrupt people right at the top there with the Rothschilds. And the Rothschilds and the Rockefellers, they control all of our banking institutions. That's my theory. Um, and I think there's even proof of it. But in my theory, yes, they control all of the banking institutions, which means they control the flow of money for sure. They are in control of all of that. How do they get there? They're corrupt. Anyway, I hope that this was a very informative episode today. I My guess is, just like I haven't heard of some of this stuff, you probably haven't either, and I think it's very interesting because I see it coming, and I just hope that I'm gone here pretty soon. But I see it coming, and even as I'm sitting here looking at this page where I pulled this PDF up, I'm looking at all the PDFs here on the side that I'm like, man, I could do an episode on that. I could do an episode on that. Like, the Rockefeller and Gates Foundations and global health governance. Like who are they to be in global health governance? They're not scientists, they're not doctors, but they have the money. That's why. They have the influence, the money. That's all you need. Anyway, that's why I'm going to leave it here today. Go join my Facebook. Go to my Instagram, gotta say something 21. Email me, gotta say something 21 at gmail.com. My subreddit, r/slash just gotta say something. I'll put my link tree in the description below. You can still buy t-shirts for 13 more days and sign the petition to protect women in prisons, because for the first time I finally heard somebody else talk about the incident of the pregnant woman, or of the woman getting pregnant because she was forced to be housed with the man who claims he's a woman. I've only heard one person talk about it up until yesterday. Steven Crowder mentioned it, and I have no idea why more people are not talking about that. That's ridiculous. So please go sign the petition and buy a t shirt. Anyway, if you're a blind viewer, don't forget you can find me on Anchor, Spotify, Google, Apple Podcasts. Go subscribe, leave me a review. And if you're watching on YouTube, don't forget to like the video, share the video. You can leave me a comment, but please, most of all, subscribe to the channel and click the notification bell so you know every time I upload a new video. Hopefully, this one doesn't get taken down and I get another strike, but who knows with YouTube? They've gone crazy. Anyway, I hope you have a good rest of your day and God bless.